Hello, welcome to the Baltimore City Fair Election Fund Training Overview. Today, we will be covering a wide range of topics that can be found on our website. Today's topics include a brief overview of the Fair Election Fund program, available resources, the participation progress, types of contributions, and any applicable requirements. The second part of the presentation will discuss how to file reports through MD-CRIS and provide additional information on disbursements and other pertinent information. Please note that the attached deck has built-in hyperlinks to allow for easy navigation of this presentation for future reference. The Baltimore City Fair Election Fund is a voluntary program for small donor financing for candidates running for mayor, city council president, and comptroller. The fund was established to provide an option for candidates to receive matching public contributions for small donations from individuals. This program reduces the role of large private contributions and involvement of special interest groups and corporations to focus on gaining community support. The fund has multiple resources at your disposal for candidates, for the public, and other stakeholders to know more about the program. We recommend you constantly use these vital resources and review our webpage for updates. Most of the information contained in today's presentation can be found in the summary guide located on the Fair Election Fund website. On this page, you will also find FAQs that will be updated frequently. Be sure to check often for updates. The Maryland Campaign Reporting Information System, commonly referred to as MD-CRIS, is where most campaign finance actions will originate. Visit the State Board of Elections website for more information on how to use MD-CRIS, to access the MD-CRIS user manual, view an MD-CRIS overview video, and to register for a training seminar. This program covers 17 elective offices that are eligible to participate in the program. To be eligible to participate in the program, a candidate must be a city resident who is running for mayor, city council president, or comptroller, and be certified by the State Board of Elections in either a primary or general election. Here, you will see an outline of the 2024 election cycle deadlines. Let's look at a few. Distribution period. This is the period during which the city distributes public contributions from the fund to a certified candidate. The period begins 365 calendar days before the primary election and ends 15 calendar days after the general election. Qualifying period. This is the period during which candidates may submit receipts to the Board of Elections to become a certified candidate. The period begins on January 1, following the last election, and ends 45 calendar days before the primary election. Receipt submission periods. This is the period during which a qualified candidate may submit receipts to the Board of Elections to receive public contributions from the fund. Submissions are due no later than 11:59 p.m. on the primary election or general election day. Candidate filing notice of intent. This is important. Candidates must file a notice of intent with the Board of Elections not later than 9 p.m. on the last Tuesday in February in the year in which the primary election will be held. The first step to participate in the program is to register a public finance committee through the MD-CRIS. At the time of registration, you have to file a notice to qualify for public contributions. A notice of intent to qualify for the program must be filed with the Maryland State Board of Elections via their electronic filing system not later than 9 p.m. on the last Tuesday in February in the year in which the primary election will be held. For the 2024 election cycle, a candidate can file a notice of intent until February 27, 2024. This slide shows the documents required for registration, including the notice of intent, the statement of organization, the appointment of chairman and treasurer, and some other important legal notices. The statement of organization, along with the appointment of the chairman and treasurer, will be used when you open up your bank account. The notice of intent lets the state and the county know your intent to participate in the program. These forms will be generated by MD Chris based on your input. The information requested only has to be entered once. Once approved by the State Board of Elections, an email will be sent to all the committee members, the candidate, the chair, and the treasurer. Be sure to check your junk and/or spam folders and ensure that the State Board of Elections is a safe sender. If you do not receive the email within 24 hours, please contact the MD Chris Help Desk. Once the email is received, the three members will receive temporary passwords to log into MD Chris. You will each then choose your own unique password. We do not keep passwords. If you forget your password, then use the Trouble Logging In feature on the program. If at any point during your campaign you have to edit your registration, meaning you have to change your chairman or treasurer or your bank account information, this can be done through MD Chris. On the left-hand side, once you log in, you can see Edit View Registration Information. There, it will take you to the screen where you will be able to select and make sure you can enter all the changes necessary. Please note, if there are any changes to the campaign bank account, you should notify the City Department of Finance ASAP to determine applicable next steps. This is critical to ensure that funds are dispersed timely and accurately. When navigating MD Chris, it's important that you click I certify these changes, as well as hitting Submit. If you do not click the button and certify and hit Submit, the changes will not be saved. It's important that you must hit that button, which is located at the bottom of the page. Upon filing a notice of intent to qualify in the Fair Election Fund program, a campaign must establish a publicly funded campaign account to handle all activity during the publicly funded campaign. All of the prior bank accounts associated with the campaign must be frozen or closed during this time period. Once the Public Finance Committee is established through MD Chris and the bank account is established, you may begin to start collecting funds and become a certified candidate. No contributions received prior to the filing of the Notice of Intent will be considered a qualifying contribution. Additionally, you may be found in violation of engaging in campaign finance activity without having a registered political committee. It's important, if you're thinking about joining the program or participating, that you register your political committee first. Then start collecting funds. Next, types of contributions and requirements. The qualifying period for becoming a certified candidate begins on January 1, following the prior general election and ends 45 calendar days prior to the primary election that the candidate is participating in. For the 2024 election, the qualifying period will run from January 1, 2023 through May 30, 2024. Qualifying contributions enables candidates to become a certified candidate for public financing. Only qualifying contributions will be matched by the program. Qualifying contributions must be at least $1, but no more than $150, made by a city resident and made during the qualification period. Contributions must be acknowledged by a receipt that identifies the contributor's name, residential address, and be signed by the contributor directly or by a digital signature. To qualify as a certified candidate, a mayoral candidate must collect 500 qualifying contributions with an aggregate of $40,000. A city council president candidate and comptroller candidate must collect 250 qualifying contributions with an aggregate total of $15,000. And a city council candidate must collect 150 qualifying contributions with an aggregate total of $5,000. In addition to qualifying contributions, a candidate can receive eligible contributions that will not qualify for public matching funds. Eligible contributions can be from a non-city resident up to $150. They must have proof of receipt submitted to the State Board of Elections. Eligible contributions can include in-kind donations up to $150. Impermissible contributions. An applicant must not accept any contributions from groups or organizations, including a political action committee, a corporation, labor organization, or a state, local, central committee of a political party, a sole proprietor, or business such as an LLC or LLP, or an individual in an aggregate that is greater than the $150 limit during the 4-year election cycle. Loans from the candidate and spouse. An applicant candidate may accept an aggregate total of $6,000 in contributions or loans from themselves and their spouse into the publicly funded campaign account during the 4-year election cycle. However, please note, the contribution loan amount is not eligible for matching funds. Receipt of contributions. These are known as contribution cards. It must be a separate receipt obtained from the contributor with the contributor's name, residential address, and signed by the contributor directly or by a digital signature. The signature must match the name on the contribution in order to be considered a qualifying contribution. For example, a credit card. The name on the credit card must match the digital signature, or the name on the check must match the signature on the check. The contributor must also certify Baltimore City residency. Without a receipt of contribution, the contribution will not qualify for matching dollars from the Fair Election Fund. A canceled check does not qualify as a signed contribution receipt for matching purposes. The contributor must sign a separate document that acknowledges the contribution and is aware of the limitations of the program in order to be a qualified contribution for matching funds. Examples of contribution cards can be found on the Maryland State Board of Elections website. Additional examples are also in the back of the summary guide. Digital signatures. Digital signatures are on a document that will be provided to the State Board where the donor made an affirmative action acknowledging the contribution to the public finance candidate. This is more than just checking a box. but an action, meaning that the coordinator must use some sort of affirmative typing when making the contribution. For example, evidence that the donor affirmatively typed in his or her initials or name at the time of making the contributions, understanding the law and its requirements for making a contribution. The supporting documentation of a digital signature must include a record with a timestamp of when the action occurred. The committee then would have to supply this document with all other evidence of the contribution that was made to the state board in order to be matched. On this slide, you will see two examples from Montgomery County, which meet the requirement for a digital signature. The documentation needed for certification. You must have receipts for all qualifying contributions, meaning you need to have contribution cards for every qualifying contribution. The notice of intent, which was already filed when you established the committee. You will submit these documents on a campaign finance report, which will include a list of all contributions received and loans received, expenditures made, and outstanding obligations still needing to be paid. Every activity that the political committee has done will be reported on these campaign finance reports. Additionally, you will need to file a certificate of candidacy for the correct covered office. This is filed at the City Board of Elections. It's important to file the certificate of candidacy first before filing the campaign finance report, because we will not be able to figure out the correct match until you actually file for the office sought. After receiving the information on the campaign finance report, the State Board will certify if the candidate has met the qualifications no later than 10 business days after receiving the report. Recertification is not required if the candidate moves from the primary election to the general election. Next, we will cover entering contributions and expenditures. Filing campaign finance reports. As a reminder, MD Chris will be used for all campaign-related reporting, including contributions and expenditures. MD Chris can be accessed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it can be located at www.campaignfinance.maryland.gov. To launch MD Chris, eligible users start by entering their username and password on the right menu. To report a contribution, on the left-hand side menu, you will find choices for what you need to do. Select Enter Contributions, Transfers in Kind Contributions. Next, select the correct filing period, contribution type, and the type of contributor. There is a type ahead feature for information that has already been previously entered to avoid data entry mistakes. Please use the type ahead feature. This is important when you enter in contributions. This makes sure that the aggregate to date is correct. Finally, the last key element in filing a campaign finance report through the program is linking receipts. Without the receipts, you will not be eligible to receive matching funds. Linking receipts is a two-step process. Step 1. You will need to scan receipts as individual PDF documents. You will then ask for the filing period, and you make sure that the correct transaction type is associated with the PDF, and you will save it on the computer. From the left side menu, select Receipt Document, Step 1, and Upload Receipt Documents. Select the filing period, transaction type, file name, and then you will be ready to upload the files into the program. You can name the receipt whatever works best for you, but if it's from an individual, It is easier to search it if it starts with the contributor last name and the first name or initial, in case you have several Johnsons that have contributed, for example. Where it says Upload File, click on the button for Choose File and navigate to the folder where you have saved the scanned documents to select it. You will need to repeat this step for each contribution or expenditure that you have. Once the receipt documents have been scanned and uploaded, you can move on to step 2. If you have any doubt, the system will acknowledge that a receipt has been saved successfully. It will tell you on the search field below. If it does not appear in the uploaded receipts below, then the item was not saved, and you will need to resave that program or that receipt. After all of the receipts have been uploaded into MD-CRIS, you have to then link the receipt to the corresponding contribution or expenditure. It's step-by-step instructions in the system. You start by selecting Receipt Documents, then select Step 2, Link Receipt Documents. Next, select Contribution or Expenditure. You must make sure that you select the transaction type, for example, contribution or expenditure, or the filing period. Select either the contributor or the payee name field and start typing in the last name. A drop-down box will appear for you to select the contributor. Under where it says Select All, check the box. Then check the button to link. You can also tweak your search criteria to see transactions that have not been linked, transactions with linked receipts, by contribution type, and even transaction date range. To unlink receipts, it's similar to linking receipts, except once you've found the correct contribution or expenditure, it will say Unlink. Then the program will advise that the receipt is successfully unlinked. So what happens if you need to delete a receipt? If a receipt was incorrectly linked or needs to be deleted, it can be deleted from this screen as well. Please select the trash can with the red X on the right side of the receipt. It will delete the receipt. This is a hard delete. Anytime you delete a data entered item, either a contribution, expenditure, a receipt, the system will delete it. It will not save it. There will be no chance for recovery. So use this function judiciously. Reporting expenditures and reimbursements are done the same way. From the left side menu, select Enter Expenditures and Outstanding Obligations. Then select the correct filing period and payee type. When entering the payee's information, a search is available by typing the payee's name in the Search Payee field. If the payee is found, the information can be automatically entered by clicking on the vendor. If the payee's information is not available through the search field, manually enter the payee's information as follows: business or organization and the mailing address. There is also a Type Ahead field for vendors that has already been previously entered into that field. Reimbursements are entered slightly differently than a normal expenditure. You enter in both the reimbursee and the vendor into the system. Please remember the State Board of Elections Help Desk is available to answer any questions to help with data entry. This slide shows the information needed for expenditure and vendor details. One of the biggest questions that the State Board of Elections gets is, what is considered an eligible expenditure by a political committee? The answer is that it has to relate to election-related campaign activities and would not occur but for the fact the individual is a candidate. Reporting and distributions. All political committees are required by law to file these campaign finance reports, including the 2022 annual report, the pre-primary 1 and 2. If you do not close after the primary election, then you will be required to file the pre-general 1, pre-general 2, post-general, and then finally the 2023 annual report. Public financing committees will not go past the 2023 annual report. In fact, they will probably be finishing up in December of 2022 as their final reporting schedule. All monies would then have to be returned. We will discuss that more toward the end of the program. Failure to file a campaign finance report on the due date will result in late fees against the political committee. The late fees, which could be up to $500, will be the personal liability of the chairman and the treasurer. The campaign finance entity may not pay late fees. Please note that the filing of these mandatory reports will also trigger a campaign finance report for certified candidates and will result in a disbursement from the county for any eligible contributions earned that have not yet been matched. Candidates that have not yet been certified by the State Board of Elections will not receive a matching distribution for eligible contributions. A little about optional campaign finance reporting. Once a candidate has been certified by the State Board of Elections, matching funds are received by completing campaign finance reports through MD-CRIS. It is important to note that applicant candidates that have filed a notice of intent but have not been certified by the State Board of Elections cannot file optional campaign finance reports. These optional reports can be filed on the first and third Tuesday of the month, with a few exceptions. So, for example, a report was due on August 6, 2024. The end transaction date would be August 5th, 2024. It is important to note that these reports are optional. The committee does not have to file them. Because they are optional, there are no late fees associated with these reports. If a campaign doesn't file a report by the cutoff, any information entered will automatically roll to the next filing period for the committee. Lastly, it is important to note that some distribution reporting periods will deviate from the first and the third Tuesday of the month. The reason for this is to coincide with the mandatory reporting schedule that was discussed on a previous slide. Please visit the Baltimore City Fair Election Fund website for a complete list of campaign finance reports for the 2024 election cycle, which includes the adjustments to account for mandatory reporting deadlines. Let's talk about the matching formula. Distributions of public funds are calculated using the contribution schedule. MD-CRIS will calculate the eligible match systematically for all contributions that are eligible to be matched with public funds. For example, if a mayoral candidate receives an eligible donation of $10, he or she will receive $90 in matching funds. This calculation is based on $9 for every $1 contributed up to $25. So, if a mayoral candidate receives a $60 contribution, he or she will receive $225 in matching funds for the first $25 contributed. This is calculated by multiplying $9 times 25 plus $175 for the remaining $35 of the contribution, calculated by multiplying $5 by 35. Therefore, the total public match for a $60 contribution will be $400. This contribution is repeated for all eligible contributions up to the maximum. Additionally, a one-time boost is given to candidates for mayor, city council president, and comptroller upon notification by the state board that the candidate has been certified for public funding. As stated on a previous slide, in order to receive the matching contribution from public funds, an optional campaign finance report must be filed using MD-CRIS. You cannot file it in any other manner. The reports can be filed up to 11:59 p.m. on the filing deadline. Only the chairman and treasurer are able to file reports as required by law. The candidate, other campaign staffers, and/or volunteers, if not one of the two responsible officers, may not file a campaign finance report. Next, we will discuss how to file a report in MD-CRIS. From the left menu in MD-CRIS, select Edit, File Pending Transaction. Select the filing period. Hit Search, then choose one of the red buttons below, which will say File All to state. File Closeout Report means you wish to close the committee. This will be only done at the end of the campaign. It is important that you hit the red button. Then it will ask you for your bank account information and ask for one of the responsible officers to certify that they are filing this under the penalties of perjury. At the end of the transaction, you will be able to print out the report. Additionally, you can go to View, Edit Registration Information under Filed Reports to see if the report has been filed right there as well. The report will be instantly put on the website for others to see. The receipt submission period. This is the period during which a qualified candidate may submit receipts for eligible contributions. Submissions are due no later than 11:59 p.m. on primary election or general election day. Receipt submission periods is defined as the period during which a qualified candidate may submit receipts to the Board of Elections to receive public contributions from the fund. Submissions are due no later than 11:59 p.m. on primary election or general election day. Distributions of public funds. After a review of the submissions by the State Board, the Director of Finance for Baltimore City is then notified to deposit the authorized matching publicly funded campaign contribution into the certified candidate's publicly funded campaign account. Such deposit shall be within 5 business days after the State Board authorizes the public contribution, during which time the Director of Finance will consult with the Fair Election Fund Commission. Key items needed so that the distribution is not delayed in getting processed are the bank account and bank routing number, and 2, the campaign tax ID number. It is important, in order to prevent delays or errors, please ensure you are keeping the City Department of Finance updated with any changes to your bank information. Nadine O'Lanaran will be reaching out to each candidate upon the filing of Notice of Intent to collect this information. To get a new vendor set up, a copy of a voided check with the pre-printed name of the campaign will be required. Starter checks provided by your banking institution will not be accepted. The director must process all authorized public contributions by the due date in the order they were received. Lastly, please note that depending on timing, the first distribution might be generated via a paper check. Please coordinate directly with the city for pickup arrangements if this were to occur. Once again, the distribution period begins 365 days before the primary election and ends 15 days from the date of the general election in which the candidate is participating. The distribution period for the November 2024 election is from April 23, 2023 through November 20, 2024. And again, distribution requests may only be submitted on the first and third Tuesday of every month, with a few exceptions. Please visit the Fair Election Fund website for a complete list of campaign finance reports for the 2024 election cycle, which includes the adjustments to account for the mandatory reporting deadlines. The maximum public contribution. The statutory maximum public contribution a certified candidate can receive is calculated together for the primary and the general election, the election cycle. For example, the maximum public contribution a certified candidate for mayor can receive is $1.5 million in public contributions for the election cycle. As a reminder, the election must be contested to receive these matching funds. Lastly, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Contested elections. In order to receive public financing matching distributions, the candidate must be in a contested primary or general election, meaning that another candidate must appear on the ballot against that candidate. Contested elections do not include write-in candidates. If a candidate certified to participate in the program is uncontested in a primary election, they must abide by the program rules and will not receive matching funds. However, if the same candidate has an opponent in the general election, all contributions they receive are eligible for matching funds following the conclusion of the primary election. A candidate who has a contested primary election but uncontested general election may submit eligible contributions for matching funds through the date of the primary election. They will not be eligible for any additional matching funds after the primary election and must continue to abide by program rules throughout the remainder of the election cycle. It is important to note, if a candidate receives any distributions from the fund or later withdraws for whatever reason, the candidate must return all public contribution amounts, including interest. There'll be more information provided about that later in this presentation. A word about goods and services purchased prior to filing notice of intent. Assets that the candidate has paid for and received prior to the filing of the notice of intent to participate in the program can only be used in limited capacities. Otherwise, pre-purchasing by a non-public financing committee for campaign materials or items to be used after certification as a publicly financed candidate is strictly prohibited. Here are two examples, one in which it would be a violation, and the other one in which it would not be a violation. The difference being is how the campaign is actually paying for the services after the fact, as well as how the item is used. Other prohibited uses of money include the personal use of expenditures relating to holding office, paying for any personal endorsements of your candidacy, or payment for late filing fees. Transfers. A publicly financed candidate may not make a transfer to other candidates for any elective office, make transfers to any other campaign finance entity, including central committees, receive transfers by any other campaign finance entity, including central committees, This means the public finance candidate must use all funds only for expenses related directly to their own personal election and the office they are seeking. Slates. The candidate may not be a member of a slate while accepting public funds. They run on their own. If they want to share pieces of a campaign material with other candidates, the candidates must pay the vendor directly for their appropriate share of the costs. Moreover, the candidate's authority line must appear on the campaign material to prove they paid the vendor directly. What happens when a candidate withdraws from the program? A candidate may choose to withdraw from this program at any time. However, they must pay back to the fund all matching distributions that have been received during the primary and the general election since joining the program, including interest. If there is not enough money remaining in the public campaign committee account, the candidate will be personally responsible for repayment. However, the director, in consultation with the commission, may reduce any personal repayment liability if the withdrawal was due to health reasons or other reasons outside the candidate's control. Personal financial hardship may also be considered. This form must be submitted to the Fair Election Fund and to the State Board of Elections. Surplus. All unspent funds remaining in the campaign's publicly funded account at the end of their contested campaign must be returned. Additional contact information. For any systems or technology-related inquiries specific to MD Chris, please contact the MD Chris Help Desk. They are available by phone or email Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. MD Chris also has a user manual that can be found on their Maryland State Board of Elections website. Please direct any additional questions or inquiries to the Fair Election Fund Commission, care of the Baltimore City Department of Finance. In summary, the following 4 slides provide a brief summary of the main points of the program. You may want to refer to them for a quick reminder of what is needed. Refer to the entire presentation, the Fair Election Fund Summary Guide, and FAQs for more details.